Julian Marrick spent $200 million trying to feel something real, and what he found will change how you see money forever. Julian Marrick didn't just build a media empire, he conquered it. By 38, his company had offices in 14 countries, a valuation that made venture capitalists weep with envy, and a personal net worth that crossed $400 million before he stopped counting. Forbes called him the Golden Architect. Wall Street called him untouchable. But when Julian looked in the mirror at 3 a.m., hands shaking from another sleepless night, he saw something else entirely. A ghost wearing an expensive suit. "I can't remember the last time I laughed," he told his therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, during their 5th session. He was sitting in her office overlooking Central Park, the autumn light cutting through the windows like knives. Not the polite laugh you do at galas. Real laughter, the kind that comes from your stomach. Dr. Chen leaned forward. "When did you last feel genuinely happy, Julian?" He thought for a long moment, then longer. "I don't know. Maybe college? Before the first company? I remember eating ramen with my roommate and laughing about nothing. We were broke. We were happy." His voice cracked slightly. "Now I have everything and I feel nothing." "What if," Dr. Chen said carefully, "the problem isn't what you have, but what you're holding on to?" Julian stared at her. "You're saying I should give things away? I'm saying you should find what matters beyond acquisition." Julian Marrick heard those words, but he didn't understand them. Not yet. And that misunderstanding would cost him everything. 3 days later, Julian walked into his company's headquarters with a decision that would make headlines for all the wrong reasons. He gathered his executive team, 12 people who'd helped him build something extraordinary, and announced he was liquidating $50 million in personal assets. Immediately. No questions. The money would go to charitable causes, employee bonuses, and something he called spontaneous generosity. His CFO, Marcus, went pale. "Julian, that's reckless. The tax implications alone." "I don't care about taxes," Julian said, and there was something wild in his eyes that made Marcus shut his mouth. "I care about feeling human again." He started small. A $10,000 tip to a waitress in Brooklyn who served him coffee. She cried. He felt a spark. The next day, he paid off the student loans of everyone in his company's mailroom. They hugged him. The spark grew brighter. By week 3, Julian Marrick was walking the streets of Manhattan with a backpack full of cash, handing $100 bills to strangers like he was distributing flyers. The media went insane. Billionaire's breakdown or beautiful gesture? CNN asked. BuzzFeed called it the most wholesome midlife crisis ever. His Instagram followers tripled overnight. People started camping outside his office building, hoping to be next. And for the first time in years, Julian felt something. Not happiness exactly, but proximity to it, like standing near a fire on a cold night. But here's what nobody tells you about chasing feelings. The more you chase, the faster it runs. By month 2, Julian had funded 17 startups without vetting a single business plan. He gave $2 million into a man who claimed he could solve world hunger with algae farms. The man disappeared 3 weeks later. Julian didn't care. He funded a documentary about sea turtles for $500,000. The filmmaker never delivered a frame. Julian barely noticed. He was too busy buying an apartment building in Queens and giving every tenant a year of free rent. "This is how I heal," he told a reporter from the New York Times, sitting in his penthouse that was slowly being emptied of furniture he kept giving away. "Every dollar I spend, I buy a piece of purpose, a piece of connection." The reporter, a woman named Lisa Park, looked at him with something between concern and fascination. "Do you think happiness can be purchased, Mr. Marrick?" "I think indifference is worse than bankruptcy," Julian said. "I'd rather be broke and awake than rich and numb." Lisa published the interview under the headline, "The Billionaire Who's Spending Himself into Oblivion." She had no idea how right she was. Julian's wife, Rebecca, tried to intervene. They'd been married 11 years, a relationship built on mutual ambition and separate bedrooms. She found him in his study at 2 a.m., writing checks by hand to people whose emails had touched him. Sob stories. Desperate pleas. He answered them all. "Julian, this has to stop," Rebecca said, her voice tight with controlled panic. "You've given away $120 million in 4 months. The board is talking about removing you. Our accountant is having panic attacks. Julian looked up at her, and his eyes were bright with something she'd never seen before. Mania disguised as purpose. Do you know what it feels like, he said slowly, to spend 20 years accumulating things that mean nothing? To wake up every morning in a prison made of success? So your solution is to burn it all down? Rebecca's voice rose. To destroy everything we built? We didn't build anything, Julian said quietly. We accumulated. There's a difference, and I'm done accumulating. Rebecca left him 6 days later. The divorce papers cited irreconcilable differences and financial recklessness. Julian signed them without reading. Then he donated their vacation home in Aspen to a nonprofit that helped at-risk youth. Rebecca found out on Twitter. But stick with me, because the real twist isn't what he gave away. It's what happened when he had nothing left to give. By month 9, Julian Marrick's company was hemorrhaging, not from market forces or competition, but from its founder. He'd started giving equity away to employees based on who needed hope. His board staged an intervention. His investors threatened lawsuits. His lawyers quit. You're not being generous, Marcus told him during their final meeting. You're being destructive. There's a difference, Julian. You're not helping people. You're trying to fix yourself by breaking everything around you. Julian fired him on the spot, then gave Marcus 6 months severance and a handwritten apology. Marcus took the money, but not the apology. The company collapsed 3 months later. A hostile takeover by a competitor who'd been circling like sharks smelling blood. Julian walked away with $4.7 million after debts and legal fees, from $400 million to barely enough to retire comfortably. The media called it the fastest fall in Silicon Valley history. Julian called it liberation. He disappeared. No forwarding address, no social media, no interviews. For 18 months, Julian Marrick became a ghost story. Podcasters speculated about mental breakdowns. Reddit threads debated whether he'd faked his own death. His mother hired private investigators who found nothing. Until a local journalist named Tom Reeves, writing a human interest piece for a Maine newspaper, stumbled into a library in a coastal town called Pemaquid Point. And there, shelving books with careful precision, was Julian Marrick. Tom almost didn't recognize him. Julian had grown a beard. His clothes came from thrift stores. His hands had calluses from manual labor. But his eyes were different, clear, present, alive. Mr. Marrick? Tom said, his voice barely above a whisper. Is it really you? Julian looked up from his cart of books. A small smile crossed his face. Just Julian. Mr. Marrick died in Manhattan. They sat in the library's cafe, and Tom recorded everything on his phone, hands shaking with the journalistic coup of a lifetime. Everyone wants to know, do you regret it? The money, the company, everything you gave away? Julian was quiet for a long moment, watching steam rise from his coffee. I regret the way I did it, he finally said. I was trying to buy my way out of emptiness, hoping throwing money at the void like that would fill it. It doesn't work that way. Then what does work? This. Julian gestured around the library, the worn books, the elderly couple reading newspapers, the teenagers studying for exams. Being useful without being important. Contributing without controlling. I make $18 an hour here. I live in a studio apartment. I ride a bike to work. He paused. And for the first time since college, I slept through the night. Tom leaned forward. But you could have done this without losing everything. You could have found balance. Why the extremes? And here's where Julian said something that will stay with me forever, and it's why you need to hear this whole story. Because I didn't know how to want less until I had nothing, Julian said, his voice steady and sure. Rich people don't learn moderation. We learn acquisition. More, bigger, better, faster. We're taught that happiness is on the other side of the next milestone. But there is no other side. There's just more milestones. He looked directly at Tom. I had to lose everything to learn the difference between price and value, between spending and meaning, between buying things and building a life. And was it worth it? Tom asked. The $395 million lesson? Julian laughed, that real laugh from the stomach he'd told Dr. Chen about. You know what's funny? I thought I was buying happiness. Turns out I was paying for permission to stop chasing it. Tom published the interview. It went viral. Millions of views, thousands of comments. People called Julian everything from enlightened to insane. Self-help gurus used his story as a cautionary tale. Financial advisors used him as a warning. But Julian didn't read any of it. He was too busy recommending books to library patrons and learning to cook in his tiny kitchen. 6 months after the interview, Tom went back to visit. He found Julian at a community garden, teaching kids how to plant tomatoes. One girl, maybe 7 years old, asked Julian what he used to do before the library. "I used to think money could buy anything," Julian told her, kneeling in the dirt. "Turns out the best things are free, but you have to lose everything to see them clearly." The girl looked confused. "That sounds sad." "It does, doesn't it?" Julian smiled. "But it's not. It's the best trade I ever made." Now here's what nobody talks about in these redemption stories. Julian didn't find peace because he became poor. He found it because he finally stopped running. The money wasn't the prison. His relationship with money was. The giving wasn't the answer. Learning to receive was. The emptiness wasn't from having too much. It was from never having enough of what actually mattered. Julian Marrick spent $395 million trying to feel something real. And what he discovered in that library in Maine, surrounded by books and quiet purpose, was worth more than any fortune. Not because poverty is noble, but because freedom isn't about what you own. It's about what owns you. He bought everything except peace, and only found peace when he stopped buying. The last time Tom spoke with Julian, he asked one final question. If you could go back, what would you tell your younger self? The Julian with $400 million and insomnia? Julian thought about it, watching the Atlantic Ocean crash against the rocks outside the library window. I'd tell him that the opposite of emptiness isn't fullness, it's purpose. And purpose can't be purchased. It has to be practiced, every single day, in ways that don't make headlines. And do you think he'd listen? No, Julian said with a sad smile. He'd have to lose everything first, just like I did. Share your comments below, subscribe for more stories.